last thing that anybody in any organization like NATO wants is a failure of the Copenhagen process, the failure to reach a new internationally binding treaty setting limits for CO2 reductions, because then, of course, the diplomats and the military will be left dealing with the consequences, and the cost of fixing the problem is going to be of a massively greater order of magnitude than the cost today still of preventing it. Now, therefore, prevention is much better than mitigation.
In Africa, where there is a direct interrelationship between environmental changes due to climate change, desertification processes, loss of land, soil erosion, and all these things. And you have, for example, in the Darfur case, the situation that you have competing groups that try to use the same part of land, nomadic herders on one side, small farmers on the other side. And if this land, which is anyway not very fruitful, and if this land disappears, it is completely clear that there is a heightened competition and that violent conflict is something that is there. But what is interesting here is that here is a direct relationship between climate change, environmental changes because of global warming, and violent conflict in the style of a war, of a new war, not a classical war, but a war.
What if a state goes under? You saw a couple of months ago that the cabinet of the Maldives met underwater to hold its first cabinet meeting. It was a bit of a publicity stunt, but it certainly drew attention. Now, if a state disappears from the map, does it still exist? The Palestinians don't have a state and therefore don't have rights because they don't have territory. It's not enough just to be a people. For example, if the Maldives disappears and somebody discovers oil in their area, do the Maldives have sovereignty over the drilling rights when their island has gone and their population has been scattered? Do they still have a flag at the United Nations? Do they sort of wait in exile until climate change is reversed and the Maldives re-emerge above the ocean? We don't know.
This is the main effect of climate change, is that the already existing asymmetries on the global scale and the already existing problems in malnutrition, in not enough access to clear water and things like that will be deepened by the effects of climate change, because the effects are not equally distributed all over the world, and there's something like a sad irony that the societies who contributed the least to the problem we have, that they did not so many emissions like the rich countries or the early industrialized countries, suffer the most from the effects of climate change.
And of course, this frustration that the poor are the victims of climate change when the rich countries overwhelmingly, since the Industrial Revolution, have caused climate change. For example, each American pumps about 20 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere every year, each Bangladeshi less than half a ton. That sense that the poor are having to sort of pay the price for what was essentially caused by the wealthy countries is obviously going to produce in diplomatic circles in the United Nations all kinds of frustrations and resentments. Nuclear power. Nuclear is back. 130 reactors are currently being built by companies around the world. The Vienna Atomic Energy Agency calculates that 550 new reactors will be built by the middle of the century. That's a lot of countries processing fissile materials. And of course, if we are unable to have a new nuclear proliferation treaty this year, which prevents countries from having their own independent fuel processing cycles, like North Korea, like Iran, then the prospect that many of these countries will divert peaceful nuclear energy to military programs, missile programs, is a very real one.
This will lead, of course, to more sources of violence. My argument is not that each scenario will end up in a war or a factual violent conflict, but we have more sources for violent conflict, and we have no idea how to cope with these problems. If it comes true what the climate researchers say, we will find ourselves in 20 or 30 years in a situation of winners and losers and highly differentiated suffering or profiting from this new situation in the world. So maybe, at this point of time, nobody would talk about world society and globalization anymore, and we have a situation of a failed globalization. Thank you very much.